That's setting the scene for where he's about to go. Okay. All right. Also, we're looking at Painter chapter 10, which examines the Depression, right? Particularly, obviously, the Great Depression is a crisis for the nation, but it is a crisis for African Americans with catastrophic Black unemployment. Now, this is important because you'll remember in chapter 9 that African Americans come out of slavery and also during the Reconstruction era as hard workers. 57.7% of African Americans, according to Painter, are in the workforce as compared to a lower percentage of white workers. These people are amazing. Yes, went through slavery and segregation. Also got to get to work. So here we go. A part of what they're doing is locked up in the icon of John Henry. Our heritage is of hard work. We're not lazy. That's just not who we are. And so that is exactly what these people are. They're symbolic of. But of course, the Great Depression hits, and the NAACP used to have this kind of phrasing to talk about the notion of how things impact African Americans. And it can be also described as a way that it impacts other minorities in the country, right? When the country gets sick, African Americans get the flu. And so Painter in chapter 10 talks about catastrophic Black unemployment during the time, the New Deal, which was a new set of government programs that were attempting to assist African Americans, and also the Scottsboro Boys case. If you think that the Nolan Wells case is crazy, if you think the Rodney King case or the George Floyd case is crazy, read about the Scottsboro Boys. Also, during this time, there are anti-lynching protests, the Don't Buy Where You Can't Work boycotts. Remember, this is well before, right, the Birmingham bus boycott. One of the reasons why we point this out in this history is because African-American people are like, oh, folks just woke up one day in a civil rights movement and Dr. King gave a speech and boom, no. These people are all the way back in the abolitionist movement, utilizing some of the same tactics for almost 100 years to break through, right, the standard essentialist structure of the state, which veers towards white supremacy. During this time as well, there are lots of support for Black artists. And also during this time period, Mary McLeod Bethune becomes African-American woman and educator, a member of the president's cabinet. Just important to recognize that, again, we think a lot about Barack Obama, extremely important. But of course, during the Reconstruction period, there were African-Americans like Hiram Revels, who was in the Senate, P.S. Pinchback, who was the governor of Louisiana. When African-Americans actually, after slavery, when they got the right to vote, after 1868, assumed public office, these are some of the most effective legislators in the history of the country. I will only give you one example. Free public education in the South, according to W. Du Bois, is the Negro's idea, which means African-Americans came to power. They got votes. They were in droves. They were a part of the Republican Party, that radical Republican Party of Lincoln, right? Free soil, free land, free men. Also Thaddeus Stevens in the Senate. And when they assumed office, they could have just said, you know what, it's just reparations for Black people. Everybody step back. No, in the South, they saw a problem that, right, particularly African Americans need education in order to be ready for the next industrial age and all the rest of that, but they did not limit, right? They did not limit this new program of free public education in the South to African Americans. They looked at the white worker, the poor white worker in particular, the white worker who, of course, has ethnic roots, who came to the country, who, of course, suffered the slings and arrows of immigration and misfortune.